What do you know about the methods? I remember the crystal ball, like in some of the movies where like you had the lady, she usually had darker skin and like dark curly hair and like the bandana and the loop earrings or hoop earrings, and she'd be like talking in an accent. I see. Yeah.
Robin Hood was my favorite.
Yeah, that's not, I remember that movie.
They were. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my favorite.
Yeah. Well, there's psychics and there's like the tarot cards.
Oh yeah. What is that about? Princess and the Frog.
Yeah. And then, do you remember any? Like, there's also some stuff that we try to avoid. Well, tarot cards, we don't encourage going to psychics, just because we believe we make our own destiny. But one method that I kind of wanted to talk to you about, because I think it can be fun, is palm reading. My husband's family actually reads palms because they're witches. Like they're not practicing or anything, but I don't know why they call themselves. Anyways, they're from Peru, in the mountains of Peru. I don't know. Like they just have a lot of cultural stuff. And palm reading actually originated in India with like the Hindu astrology. And some people say that as opposed to telling fortunes, it actually is just a early form of counseling. They would look at your hand and they would say, oh, it looks like you're struggling with this emotion or this trial, or it looks like you're unhealthy in this way. And so it was more like a counseling as to get better, as opposed to like, oh, you're gonna win money or whatever for the future. And so with palm reading, there's a lot of different interpretations, and so it's up for speculation of how accurate it is. I personally think it's man-made and therefore not that accurate, but it is interesting to kind of see what different people interpret. And so I thought like I would just expose you to like the brief little bit of it, because to really read palms you have to study for like forever, and there's so many things to read. But this is kind of in general. I don't agree with everything it has on here, but this is for you. And this is a diagram of the hand, and majority of lines that you might have, like you can look at your hand and see, oh yeah, I have that line, but I don't have that line, and things like that. So what I was thinking might be fun is I can identify a couple of your lines and you can identify a couple of mine. We can practice a little bit. Does that sound good? Okay, do you mind if I touch your hand? Okay. So it's very personal palm reading, and you kind of have to like have a feel of people's energies and stuff, and that's kind of foreign for us white girls.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's easier for like Chinese people and like Peruvian people and like people that are like, oh, I feel your aura. So, okay. So first off, I think the most prominent line that you have is your lifeline. Now, this is a list that I made of different popular things about your lifeline. And so according to our list, we can look that you have a pretty long and do you see like how far away from it is from your thumb? That means that you're pretty energetic and you love life. Yes? Yeah? Alright, so maybe it's not that far off. But so you could look at these and say, oh, if it was closer, you'd be a little more antisocial and things like that. So this is your lifeline. Now, there is a misconception that, like, depending on the length of your line, depends on your life, like how long it's going to be. That's completely false. Mostly it's about, like, what you're going to experience. And you actually don't have a lot of lines away from your lifeline. And so I think that means you have a lot more to experience. Because my lifeline, I have, like, all these, like, strange lines. And it's just the different experiences that I've had. But you will notice as it goes on, even though every handprint is different, it'll change. As like your life continues, it'll change. And it's interesting because you were born with it, but yet it continues to change. So anyhow, and then this line is, according to the diagram, it's your line of head, but I've also heard it's your family line. And what's really neat about your lifeline and your family line is see how they connect. That's pretty impressive because that means that your life is really attached to your family. Oh, according to some interpretations at least. Remember, this is basically just lines in your hand. So, but according to the headline, if you have let's see, kind of a short line, it kind of goes in the middle, kind of deep, so you're intelligent and intuitive. I think you're pretty intelligent from the little.
Thanks.
So, I don't know. And then, like, if you had a faint line, you'd have poor memory. Maybe mine's pretty faint, I'm not sure. So, and then, this is the line of either, according to the diagram, it's your heart line, but it could also mean your wealth. And yours, I can see, is pretty deep. So if it was your wealth line, it means you're going to have a lot of money, which is pretty nice. But again, don't count on it. But like, so according to this diagram, like you would have a deep line. You might, on a long line, you might be idealistic and dependent on a partner, or maybe a little stressed out sometimes. But I don't always see that in you. So anyhow, so not that I really am that experienced, but anyways. So that's just the three major lines. There are other lines, but those are the three major ones. So you want to try somebody else's? Okay.
So show yours.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
It's pretty fun, huh?
Okay. So you're one of. I don't want to like predict your future.
No, you don't have to predict it. It's not predicting future. It's more about like character. I know, it's a little weird.
Okay, I don't know why that was so funny, dude. Okay. This is family life, right?
This is the family line, or according to this, the heart line. Mm-hmm.
No.
This is the heart or wealth.
Okay. Well, yours is looking pretty deep, so I don't know. Maybe
I'll
some
get
of that. I don't know. And family, not life. I don't know. It looks deep. I don't know.
It's interesting. Like if we were just to compare. Let's see. Let's use the same hand. Okay. So if we were to compare, you have less ridges. I have more deep ridges here, and then look, yours is pretty straight, and mine is curved, and it goes up, and then it like has like a little connection here. And so I've had some people tell me that means that there's a rift in my family or some thing like that. Like, it's just weird. But what I will say that's interesting is, do you notice how your lifeline is here, and then I have two? Do you wonder why that might be? A lot of people don't have two. I have a twin sister, and she has the same thing on her hand. Ooh. So that's pretty fun little tidbit. So, anyways, it's just.
Wait, you really have a twin?
I have a twin sister, and she has the same line, but my husband doesn't have the line. None of my other siblings have that line. Sometimes, though, if people have double lines, it could just mean that they have like another person that's integral to their life. But in my case, I just happen to have a double line, and my identical twin sister happens to have the same thing. So,
Wait,
pretty weird and wacky stuff, huh? What?
Have you met another twin who has the same lines?
I haven't looked. Honestly, like, I don't look at people's hands and say, oh, let me, like, predict or let me see.
So, when I saw it, I was like, hey, this is something new. Because, I mean, some of these things, like, you know, the same thing. And I'm like, hey, something new. We'll just try it.
I know. Well, and I thought it would be fun. And my husband, he actually reads palms, but he wouldn't teach me how to do it because he said that there's a lot of responsibility that goes with it. And he just says you don't understand it and you can't teach it in 15 minutes. And so basically, I mean, he did teach me a couple of simple things, but he wouldn't go into great detail because a lot of people can put their fate on the line with that.
Yeah.
I mean, why do you think fortune telling, we're kind of warned against, like, going to psychics or, you know, having our palms read, or why do you think that would be something that we're kind of, like, hesitant or told to avoid?
Well, the same thing I think with, like, going to and doing, oh, now I just forgot what it's called. Scratching cards. What's it called? The gas stations, like.
Oh, scratchers, yeah. For the lottery.
Yeah, lottery. Like the same type of. I forgot lottery. But like the same thing about that, where they just like lose money over it and waste their time worrying about it and think about it instead of just living their life as it is. Because, I mean, yeah, you might have lines on your hands and stuff, but just living your life.
I think I agree with that, and I would just add to it that there are people that would just use it as a form of healing and counseling, but there are people that would, you know, try to like predict futures, and they're getting paid for it, and so they could scare you. And did you ever see the movie The Matrix? Okay, well, let me describe the scene to you, because like I just thought it was a perfect example of this. So one of the characters, he goes to see an oracle to get told something, and what happens is she warns him. She's like, watch out for that vase, and he's like, what vase? And he immediately knocks it over, and he's like, well, how did you know I was going to do that? And she's like, no, now you're going to wonder, would you have knocked that vase over had I not told you? And that's kind of what, like, palm reading, like, it's very controversial because like it could influence people and change like the course of their lives, and that's not appropriate. And so like if you were to like look into it further, I would just treat it with a grain of salt. Make sure that you don't put any faith behind it, and make sure if you do kind of play with somebody and say, oh, look what I learned, that you don't try to predict anything, because we don't know their future. So anyways, did you have any other questions? Like, I don't.
No, that was good.
So anyways,